Hi everyone, this is Holly from HS Crested. Today I'm going to be showing you how I modified this Rubbermaid front access storage tub to be used as quarantine housing for a new gecko arriving in the mail next week. A package of 2 cost me around $30 on Walmart's website. It's a great inexpensive way to house geckos, even if you're not trying to use them for quarantine, so you're welcome to follow these instructions to make this a permanent habitat. For anyone unsure of when quarantining your gecko is needed, if you have more than one animal in your collection, you plan to breed, or you are unsure of whether the animal you are receiving is in good health, you would need to monitor your gecko for at least 3 months. This means yes, you would need to quarantine, and minimal plants with a paper towel bottom will make cleaning easy. This project is very simple to do. You'll need a couple things first before you start, which number 1 is this container. This is a medium-sized front access tub according to Walmart's website. Its dimensions are 19.5 by 17.5 by 15 inches. My favorite part about this is the front door is completely clear and easy to see through. You'll also be needing a couple tools for this project as well, which number 1 is a soldering iron. I use this to poke holes in the plastic. It also melts it, makes it a little bit easier to manage. So I'm going to plug this in and heat it up, and while I do that, we're also going to discuss some other things you might need, which is a Sharpie, of course. This is to mark the holes on the top of your container. Normally I start with the corners because I have a little bit of OCD, to be honest, so I want everything to be even, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. You need to have enough holes on the top where you can get a good airflow going, but not too many to let out humidity. So I'm going to start with the corners and then fill in from there. If you don't have a soldering iron, you're also welcome to cut out that center piece that you see there on the top and replace that with screen. You can use hot glue to keep it in place or silicone if you want it to be completely waterproof. It's not necessary, but it's a good option if you don't have a soldering iron and don't want to possibly burn yourself. So now that I've made all my holes, I'm just going to start with the soldering iron, which is heated up by now. Basically, you just want to start with the point down, touch it on one of the holes, and give it some pressure. It should start to go through immediately. It's going to start to smoke, mainly because it's burning off plastic, so I suggest you do this in a well-ventilated area, wearing a mask, or both, actually, to prevent, any problems involving bad smoke inhalation, because no one wants to breathe in burning plastic. But for the sake of the video, I didn't really care too much. But you'll see in just a moment why a ventilated area is definitely necessary. If you're younger, I definitely suggest you have your parents help you with this project. Yay! Shut up! Shut up! Why won't it shut up? There's no fire! Shut up! Ugh. Shut up. Thank you. After that whole fiasco, I continued to finish melting the holes in the top of my container. I went around all of the outside edges to make sure I got all of the holes that I marked originally. Just a quick tip, make sure you tape down the top to the box to make sure that it doesn't move around so you don't have to fix it constantly like I do. After you've finished the top, you're going to flip to the side and you're going to do a series of holes, a minimum of 7, no more than 10, on each side of your container. If you only plug in your soldering iron for small amounts of time, you may need to go back and redo the holes, but don't worry about the extra plastic that's left behind. You can also scrape it off at the end once it's completely hardened and dried. Once you're done with all the sides, I would suggest going to the front. This is completely optional, but I still suggest it. Placing holes about every inch or so above the top of the door. I felt this was necessary mainly because I wanted to make sure that they got enough airflow, and since it's towards the top, heat will rise and my room tends to be warmer than the rest of the house, so I wanted to make sure that it had an extra place to escape, but also not to let out too much humidity as well. These holes are also a great way to connect plants to the inside of your habitat if you wanted to have them hanging. So if you wanted to cover the front door on the inside somewhat with plants, you could also use the holes that way to kind of cover over the front door and go through the plants to get to the animals. It makes them feel a little bit more secure, but also lets in a little bit of light through the front door. As with a regular habitat, you're also going to need a couple things that are completely necessary to keep your gecko sane. You're going to need some climbing things, like I'm using this piece of wood. You're going to be wanting to place a couple of these in the habitat, but not too many. You don't want to overcrowd the habitat to make it so you can't see them. This is treated wood. I'll do a video on that in the future. You're also going to need a bunch of plants, but obviously not too many, because you want to be able to see your gecko at all times, especially when they're in quarantine. You need to make sure that whenever you check up on them that they're going to be healthy and safe. All of these plants are craft store plants or dollar store plants. I'm going to show you how to treat them. They all have some labels on them, so I'm going to be removing those a little bit later. But you need to treat any sort of craft store or dollar store plant, especially if it's fabric, mainly because there are dyes that they use on the leaves that may be harmful to the gecko. For the most part, if you treat them, they should be fine to use in the habitat. These plastic ones that I'm holding in my hands right now, these are from Michaels, and I definitely do suggest you buy any sort of plastic plant from Michaels. They're really good, high quality, and they look pretty realistic, so they look really nice in the habitat. You'll need to do a check over for the wires, of course, so you'll be able to see right in between here. There's a pretty big piece of wire sticking out. In the end, I don't end up using these plants for the habitat that you see today, but I'm going to show you that you pretty much need to nip them off regardless, and make sure you double check. You don't want to come into your gecko's habitat and see that they're bleeding for an unknown reason and then have to scour through all the plants then just to find out which one caused the damage. Plus, you want to be sure that the habitat is completely safe, so if your animal does start randomly bleeding, you would know for sure that it was something wrong with the animal and not with the habitat. This way you can schedule a vet trip and make sure that they get the care that they need as soon as possible. Now that all the labels have been taken off and the plants are prepared, what you're going to need to do to make them safe for your habitat is you're going to need to boil the plants on the stove in a giant pot for at least 25 minutes. This will help bring out all the dyes and also kill anything that might be living on the plants. If you don't have access to a stove or boiling water, but you have unnaturally high heated tap water, then you can definitely use that to soak them for a long period of time. Basically, what you're going to do to soak them is you're going to need to obviously fill up a sink with the hottest water that you can possibly get out of your faucet, and you're going to let those plants sit and soak completely covered, or as covered as you can get them, for at least a half an hour. After a half an hour, you'll drain the water and you'll go back and you'll do it again, since one soak might not be enough to draw out all the extra dyes. If you are having flowers in your habitat like I am, here's a couple tips for picking out flowers at the dollar store. You want to avoid anything that has any sort of, obviously, spikiness to it. You want to avoid glitter, anything sticky that might stick to your gecko's feet or have them ingest and cause any sort of impaction problems. You want to avoid that as much as possible, which is why leafy greens are the best choice. However, I'm not against using fake flowers in the habitat. Just make sure that they follow the rules that I basically just explained. No glitter, nothing sticky, and nothing pointy. And if they have bright colored dyes in them, you may need to rinse them separately from the greens, because the bright dyes on the flower might dye the other greens that you have soaking in with them. So that's why I'm not too worried about this white flower. It's finally time to drain. These plants have been soaking for quite a long time. I did 2 soaks. The first soak was a half an hour. The second one was about an hour, so they should be good to go now. When you're ready to take them out to have them dried off, use paper towel. Don't use a regular towel, mainly because the dyes will seep out and ruin your towels, especially if you have white ones. So we're back in my room now. I'm not going to wipe down these plants. You can if you want to, but I chose to just put them straight into the habitat after this. To get started, basically you just want to open up the front of your habitat and take the top off to make it easy to access from all angles that you can possibly get to. You're going to be lining the bottom with paper towel. I use Bounty or any other sort of 2-ply paper towel that has multiple layers, mainly because it'll hold on to humidity a little bit better and it'll help keep that humidity up a little bit, which you want to make sure that you're maintaining that average 50% humidity throughout the day and an increase of up to 90% when you mist at night, especially if it's for a quarantine tub, because you want to make sure that they have the best living conditions that you can possibly give them. You want to make sure that they're healthy because they're healthy, and if they're sick, it's not because of bad husbandry or anything like that. You need to be able to bring them to the vet and know exactly what's wrong so they can help you the best that they can. So you have an option of folding the paper towel like I did here, which adds, another extra half a layer to the bottom, or you can cut it to size. Either one really works. After your paper towel is in and set, you can start adding things to the habitat. That is the piece of wood that you saw earlier, and I'm laying it diagonally across the tank, mainly so it can give her, more of space to move around, and she can get from one side to another without having to go onto the floor. That's also a very important thing. Since they are an arboreal species, they do prefer to be up in the trees. They rarely go down on the ground unless, they're a female and they want to lay eggs, things along those lines. So you're really going to need to make sure that there's enough places for them to be up in the trees, hypothetically. So you can use a lot of big-leaved plants. You can layer them to sort of fill it in a little bit more, and you can hang plants from the sides. So you'll see here that I'm bending the plant over and I'm trying to stick it through one of the air holes, which is perfectly acceptable since there's so many air holes available in the habitat. So taking up one isn't going to do much damage. You can make sure that the paper towel itself on the bottom is flat to make sure that, she can't really get in through and hide underneath the bedding, because you don't want to be freaking out and taking apart the habitat trying to find her. So after you've put all your plants in, you can go back and you can reorganize them and mess them around a little bit, make them look a little more natural, and make sure that they're placed in a place that, you're happy with, you think your gecko's going to be happy with. You want to try and keep the floor as clean as possible. As you can see down here, there's almost nothing on the floor except for some of the stems of the plants. This makes it really easy, so if your gecko were to ever, of course, poo, you'd be able to see it and also clean it easily. You're also going to probably need to clean the plants, I'd say at least every 2 or 3 weeks, just to make sure that they're clean and they have a nice sanitary habitat to stay in. It also makes it really easy to collect a fecal sample if you were to bring it to a vet and get it analyzed to make sure that your gecko doesn't have any worms or any other problems like that. Your vet will be able to check through that method. So that's basically the entire process, and you can see me here, I'm just pushing down on those plants that are hanging from the inside. You want to make sure that they're not going to come out and they're sturdy, so if your gecko does decide to climb on them, that they're not just going to fall out and they're going to fall also with it. You want to make sure that it's secure. If you really feel it's necessary and the plants seem to be coming out a little bit, you can always take packing tape or something like that and push it down against the side of the tank and tape it in place. But basically this is the view from the top. You just close the top on, push it down, and make sure all the leaves are out of the way, which I managed to not do the first time I closed this. And basically that's it. If you have a female, you're going to absolutely need a lay box in there as well, which I have another video on how to make a lay box, and I definitely suggest you check it out. So that's the entire completed project. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it helps some of you guys create some habitats for your geckos. If you have any more suggestions on any sort of DIY videos or anything like that, or even, videos that involve care or something along those lines, I love to answer questions and I love to help you guys out, so even if it takes me a while to edit a video, I will definitely put it out there if it means that it's going to help you. So thank you so much again for watching, and please leave a like. If you like this video, subscribe, because there will be more in the future. Make sure to find me on all social media. I have Facebook and Instagram. You're also welcome to email me directly if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Have a great day, guys.